The blood bag hung above her like a fragile promise, and Damien Kane, a man who had never begged for anything in his entire life, was silently begging a God he did not believe in to let the transfusion work. The little girl on the hospital bed weighed almost nothing. Her hospital gown swallowed her, and yet even in her stillness, there was something about her round cheeks, her soft rosebud mouth, and the faint, stubborn set of her jaw that made his chest ache in a way he could not name. He did not know her. He had met her 93 minutes ago in the lobby of St. Ambrose Memorial, when a curvy, exhausted woman had collapsed in front of him, clutching a clipboard and whispering that her daughter was dying and no one in the registry matched. He had rolled up his sleeve without a word. He had signed the release without a word. And now he sat in a $5,000 suit, in a plastic chair beside a stranger's child, watching his blood drip slowly into her thin arm. And he could not, for the life of him, understand why he felt as though something inside him was cracking open. The mother stood on the other side of the bed. Her name was Nora Bellwether. She had told him that twice, both times apologizing for taking up his time. She was tall and soft-framed, plus size, in a way that made her look like she had been built to hold people, with a full round face streaked with dried tears, a heavy braid of chestnut hair over one shoulder, and hands that trembled as they cradled the little girl's fingers. Her cardigan was 2 sizes too big, and had a smear of finger paint on the sleeve. She was, Damien noted with a strange, precise clarity, the most beautiful woman he had ever seen, and he had no idea what to do with that thought, so he set it aside like a loaded weapon. Silence, the machines beeped, the blood dripped. The child breathed. "You don't have to stay," Nora whispered. Her voice was a raw, quiet thing. "I mean it. You've done so much already. I don't even know how to thank you. I don't even know your name." "Kane," he said. Her eyes flickered with something. Recognition, maybe. Fear, maybe. In this city, the name Kane meant one of 2 things: unimaginable wealth or unimaginable danger. Damien was both. But Nora only nodded once, too tired to be afraid, and turned back to her daughter. "Her name is Poppy," she said. "She's 6. She likes bees and paper airplanes, and she doesn't understand why she's so tired all the time." Damien looked at the child. Poppy. 6 years old. Aplastic anemia, the doctors had said. Rare blood type. AB negative. With a subfactor so unusual, the registry had listed 3 matches in the entire eastern seaboard, and none of them were reachable in time. He had walked into the hospital that afternoon for a routine consultation with his personal physician, and he had walked past a sobbing woman on the floor, and something in him, some cold buried thing he thought had died with his brother 20 years ago, had made him stop. He had asked what was wrong, he had asked to be tested, and the phlebotomist had come back 40 minutes later, pale and shaking, and had said, "Sir, you're a match. Not just a match, a perfect match. We've never seen a match this clean outside of direct family." Damien had said nothing then, he said nothing now. But his mind, that terrifyingly efficient machine that had built an empire from nothing and crushed 3 rival organizations before he was 30, had already begun to circle a single impossible question, and he did not yet have the courage to speak it aloud. Because Damien Kane was sterile. He had been sterile since the age of 19, when a bullet meant for his father had passed through his lower abdomen and taken with it any possibility of children. 3 specialists had confirmed it over the years. 4, when he had bothered to check again at 30, he had made peace with it, he had built his empire around it. He had told himself that a man like him should not have children anyway. And yet the little girl on the bed had his mother's mouth. He looked away sharply, as if the thought itself were a betrayal. He was tired. He was seeing things, perfect. Blood matches happened. Rarely, but they happened. He was a wealthy man with a rare blood type doing a kindness for a stranger, and that was all this was, and that was all this would ever be. He told himself this twice. He did not believe it either time. Across the room, Nora watched the impossibly handsome, terrifyingly still man in the black suit, and thought, in the small, numb part of her mind that was still capable of thought, that she had never seen a person hold themselves so tightly. He looked like a statue that had been ordered not to break. And she wondered, with the last flicker of curiosity she had left, what was inside him that he was working so hard to keep contained. Then Poppy stirred. Just a twitch of fingers. A sigh. And Nora forgot the man in the chair, and Damien forgot the question in his mind, and for a long moment there was only the child, and the drip, and the fragile miracle of a small heart continuing to beat. 6 hours later, when the transfusion was finished, and Poppy's color had come back in a soft flush across her cheeks, Damien stood to leave. His shirt sleeve was still rolled up. His tie was slightly askew, which was the closest thing to disarray he had allowed himself in a decade. Nora rose too. She looked at him as if she wanted to say 1,000 things, and could not find the shape of any of them. "Thank you," she said finally. It was too small a word, she knew it. He knew it. He nodded. He wanted to say something. He did not know what. He was a man of few words, on his best days, and this was not one of them. So he reached into his jacket, produced a plain black card with a single phone number embossed on it, and set it on the tray beside the bed. "If she needs anything," he said, "anything at all, call this number. Someone will answer, day or night." Nora's eyes filled again. "I can't." "You can," he said. Quietly. Firmly. "You will." And then he left. In the hallway, his consigliere and oldest friend, Marcus Vale, was waiting. Marcus was a tall, lean man, with a permanent expression of mild amusement, and eyes that missed absolutely nothing. He had been standing there, apparently, for hours. "So," Marcus said, falling into step beside him as they walked toward the elevators. "A charity case? That's new." "It wasn't a charity case. You gave blood to a dying child. Right off the street, without a background check. Without a security sweep, without so much as a phone call to me first." Marcus's voice was light, but his eyes were sharp. "Damien, in 15 years I have never seen you make a single unplanned decision." "What was that?" Damien did not answer for a long moment. The elevator doors opened. They stepped inside. "She looked like she was going to die on the floor," he said at last. "The mother, or the child, both." Marcus was quiet. Then softly, he said, "You look shaken." "I am not shaken." "You look utterly shaken." "My friend," Damien said nothing. The elevator descended in silence. But by the time they reached the parking garage, he had made 3 decisions. 1. He wanted the full medical file on Poppy Bellwether delivered to his private office by morning. 2. He wanted a discreet financial arrangement made so that every medical bill that woman ever received would be paid before she saw it. And 3. He wanted a DNA test. He did not tell Marcus about the third one. Not yet. He needed to be sure first that he was wrong. The next 3 weeks passed in a strange, quiet suspension. Nora Bellwether returned to her small apartment above the flower shop, where she worked as a florist and part-time bookkeeper. Poppy grew stronger by the day, which the doctors called remarkable, and Nora called a miracle. And Damien, when he read the reports in his study at midnight, with a glass of whiskey, untouched at his elbow, called, simply, relief. He did not visit. He told himself this was appropriate. He was a stranger. He had given blood. He had paid the bills anonymously through a shell foundation, with a name so bland that Nora had assumed it was a charity for underprivileged children. There was no reason for him to see the child again. There was no reason. He kept telling himself this. And then, on the 22nd day, the DNA results arrived in a plain manila envelope on his desk, delivered by a courier who did not know what he was carrying. Damien sat alone in his office at the top of the Kane Tower, 62 stories above the city, and he opened the envelope with hands that were, for the first time in his adult life, not entirely steady. He read the results once. He read them again. Probability of paternity: 99.998%. Silence. He set the paper down. He walked to the window. He looked out over the city he owned, more or less, and he thought about a small girl with rosebud lips and paper airplanes, and he thought about 3 specialists who had told him he could not have children, and he thought about a woman with a chestnut braid and finger paint on her sleeve, who had, for reasons he could not yet imagine, given birth to his daughter, and he did not know her, he did not remember her. That was the part that undid him. Because Damien Kane remembered every face he had ever encountered. It was a professional discipline. And yet Nora Bellwether, whose child was demonstrably his, was a complete stranger to him. Something was wrong. Something had been wrong for a very long time. He picked up his phone. He dialed Marcus. "I need you to find out," he said without preamble, "everything about Nora Bellwether, where she was 7 years ago, who she knew, what happened to her." And Marcus: "Yes, I need you to be very, very careful. Because I think someone did something to her. And I think they did it to hurt me." Marcus was silent for a long moment. Then he said quietly, "Damien, what are you telling me?" "I'm telling you," Damien said, and his voice was terrifyingly calm, "that I have a daughter. And I did not know." He hung up. He stood at the window a long time. And in the reflection of the glass, for the first time in 20 years, he thought he could see the shape of the boy he had been before the bullet, before the empire, before the ice. A boy who had wanted, very simply, to be a father someday. He closed his eyes. Then he opened them, and the ice slid back into place. Because a boy could not do what needed to be done. But a king could. Meanwhile, 3 miles away, in the small apartment above Bellwether Blooms, Nora was tucking her daughter into bed and reading her a story about a bee who wanted to fly to the moon. Poppy was pink-cheeked and giggling and very much alive, and Nora, who had not slept properly in years, felt something loosen in her chest for the first time since the diagnosis. "Mama," Poppy said, half asleep. "The man in the hospital. The one who gave me the blood, is he coming back?" Nora paused. "I don't know, sweetheart. He was very kind, but he's a very busy man." "He looked sad," Poppy murmured. "He looked like he was looking for something." Nora smoothed her daughter's hair. "Go to sleep, my love." But long after Poppy was asleep, Nora sat at her small kitchen table and turned the black card over and over in her fingers. She had not called the number. Every bill had been mysteriously handled by a foundation she had never heard of. Every follow-up appointment had been scheduled and paid for. And once, and she had gone downstairs to open the shop, she had found a fresh delivery of the rarest peonies she had ever seen, with no invoice, no note, no explanation. She was not a stupid woman, she had begun to suspect. But she was also a tired woman and a proud one, and she did not know how to ask a man like Damien Kane what he wanted. So she said nothing, and she waited. And she watched the door of her little shop each morning to see if he would walk through it. He did not. Not yet. But other people did, because Damien Kane's investigation, quiet and thorough and led by Marcus Vale with the precision of a scalpel, was beginning to turn up things that made Damien's blood run cold. Nora Bellwether had 7 years ago been a night nurse at a private clinic on the north side of the city. A very specific private clinic, the same clinic where Damien Kane had gone, at the age of 27, for a routine procedure related to a chronic back injury. He had been sedated, he had been there overnight. He had woken with no memory of the 12 hours in between, which he had, at the time, assumed was simply the effect of the anesthetic. The clinic had been owned, through 6 layers of shell companies, by a man named Victor Croft. Victor Croft, his father's old rival, the man who had put the bullet in Damien's abdomen 20 years ago, the man who had, everyone believed, died in a house fire 6 years back. Everyone had believed wrong. Marcus laid the file on Damien's desk and said very carefully, "He's alive, and we think he had Nora under coercion or manipulation, involved in something at that clinic. She left 3 months later. She was pregnant. She never told anyone who the father was. She raised the child alone." Damien did not speak. "Damien," Marcus said, "if Croft did what we think he did, he took something from you. Genetic material, and he made a child. Not to give you a daughter. To make a weapon. To make a hostage. To have leverage over you if he ever needed it." Damien's hands were flat on the desk. His face was terrifyingly calm. "And Nora," he said. "We don't think she knew. We think she was told the sample came from an anonymous donor. She was young, she was working 3 jobs. Croft's clinic did unregulated fertility work. On the side, she may have been offered a chance to be a mother. She may have been used. We don't know yet. Find out, we will." And Marcus, "Yes, if Croft knows about the transfusion, if he knows that I've made contact with them, then Nora and Poppy are in danger. Right now, tonight." Marcus nodded once. "Already handled. 2 teams, rotating. She won't see them." Damien stood. He walked to the window. He looked out at the city. "I want him found," he said quietly. "I want everything he owns. I want every person he employs. I want every dollar he has ever laundered. I want it all on my desk by Friday. Yes, and Marcus. Yes, prepare Black Protocol." Marcus went very still. "Damien, Black Protocol is for... I know what it is." Damien stood at the window a long time. And somewhere in the city, a small woman with a chestnut braid was closing up her flower shop for the night, humming a lullaby about a bee, entirely unaware that her life had just been placed inside the protective walls of an empire she did not know existed. The next morning, Damien did something he had not done in 15 years. He walked into a flower shop. The bell above the door of Bellwether Blooms rang, and Nora looked up from the counter with a bright, practiced customer service smile, and the smile faltered, and then dissolved, and then reformed into something startled and shy and utterly unguarded. "Mr. Kane," she said, "Miss Bellwether." Silence. The shop smelled of eucalyptus and roses. Poppy was in the back corner in a small chair, coloring a picture of what appeared to be a bee wearing a crown. She looked up. She saw Damien. And she smiled, wide and easy, as if she had been expecting him. "You came back," she said. Damien, who had negotiated hostile takeovers of billion-dollar corporations without breaking a sweat, could not, for one long, terrifying second, remember how to speak. "I did," he said finally. "I told Mama you would." Nora was blushing. She was fumbling with a ribbon. She was, Damien noted, with that same precise clarity that had been haunting him for weeks, luminous. She had put her hair up today. She was wearing a soft green dress that fit her full frame in a way that made him have to look at the ceiling for a moment, to gather himself. "I wanted to check on Poppy," he said, which was true, and also entirely insufficient. And I wanted to ask if you would both do me the honor of joining me for dinner. Nora blinked. Dinner. Tomorrow evening, somewhere quiet, cell. Somewhere with good bread, because I understand that is an important criterion when dining with a 6-year-old. Poppy, from the back, said, "It is very important." "I don't," Nora began. "Mr. Kane, I don't know how to—" "Damien?" His name in her mouth did something to him that he chose not to analyze. "You've done so much already, I don't know how to accept more from you. I don't even know why you're doing any of this." He looked at her. He wanted badly to tell her the truth. He wanted to say, "Because your daughter is my daughter, and I did not know. And I have spent every night for 3 weeks not sleeping because of it." He wanted to say, "Because someone hurt you, and they did it to get to me. And I will spend the rest of my life making it right." He wanted to say, "Because I have not been able to think about anything but you since the moment you fell in the hospital lobby, and I am a man who thinks about many things at once, and this is unprecedented." He said, "Because I would like to." It was, in his defense, the truest small thing he had said in years. Nora looked at him. She looked at Poppy. She looked at the floor. "All right," she said softly. "Dinner." He nodded. He turned to leave. At the door he paused. "Miss Bellwether? Nora? Nora?" Another small, unfamiliar warmth. "Lock your doors tonight, all of them. And if anything at all feels wrong, you call the number I gave you immediately." "Why would—" "Just," he said. "Please." And then he was gone. Nora stood in her flower shop, with a ribbon dangling from her fingers, and her heart beating in a way it had not beat in 7 long years, and she did not know whether to be afraid or delighted. So she was quietly, both. The dinner did not happen, because Victor Croft, who had been watching Nora Bellwether for 6 years the way a spider watches a fly, saw Damien Kane walk into her flower shop, and he understood, at last, that his weapon had been discovered. He moved that night. Nora was closing the shop. Poppy was in the back room, singing to herself. And a black van pulled up outside, and 3 men in dark clothes stepped out, and one of them had a gun with a silencer on it. And Nora, who had never been in a fight in her life, saw them through the window, and her body went cold. Saw them. She grabbed a black card from her apron pocket. She dialed the number with fingers that did not seem to belong to her. Someone answered on the first ring. "Miss Bellwether, they're outside. 3 men, please." "My daughter is, ma'am." "Listen very carefully. Go to the back room. Take Poppy. Go into the walk-in cooler and close the door, and do not come out until you hear my voice. My name is Marcus. You will know it is me because I will say the word peony. Do you understand?" "Yes." "Go. Now." Nora ran. She swept Poppy into her arms, kicked open the cooler door, pulled it shut behind her, and sank to the floor in the freezing dark, holding her daughter against her chest, and whispering that everything would be all right. Everything would be all right. Mama has you. Mama has you. Poppy remarkably did not cry. She only pressed her small face into Nora's neck and said, "Is the sad man coming?" "Yes, baby," Nora whispered, without knowing why she said it. "The sad man is coming." Above them, the bell over the shop door rang. Footsteps, shattered glass. Voices. And then faintly more footsteps and different voices, and a series of small controlled sounds that Nora, from her ignorance, could not identify, but which were, in fact, the sound of 6 of Damien Kane's most trained men neutralizing 3 of Victor Croft's least prepared ones in under 40 seconds. Silence. then a knock on the cooler door. 3 raps. Precise. Miss Bellwether. Marcus's voice. It is safe. The word is peony. Nora opened the door. Marcus was there, calm and lean and smiling faintly in a way that was probably meant to be reassuring. Behind him, the shop was in ruins, but the men in dark clothes were gone, and standing in the middle of the destruction, in a long black coat with snow on the shoulders, was Damien Kane. He looked at Nora. He looked at Poppy in her arms. And Nora, who had spent 7 years being invisible, and small and grateful for scraps, saw something in his face that she had never seen, aimed at her before, in her entire life. She saw devotion, she saw fear, she saw love. Nora, he said. His voice was not steady. I am going to explain everything. I am going to tell you every single thing. But right now I need you and Poppy to come with me. Because it is not over yet. And I need you somewhere safe. She nodded. She could not speak. He crossed the room in 3 long strides. He did not touch her, though she could see him wanting to. He knelt instead in front of Poppy, still in her mother's arms. Hello, Poppy. Hello, sad man, his mouth twitched. I brought you something. He reached into his coat and produced a small paper airplane, folded from what appeared to be a page from an old book. Your mother told me you like these. Poppy took it with grave, delighted seriousness. Thank you, she said. You are less sad today. I am, he said. A little. And then he stood, and he led them out of the ruined flower shop, and into a car that was armored in ways Nora could not see, and into the beginning of the rest of her life. The safe house was not a safe house. It was a penthouse, high above the city, all warm wood and soft lamps, and a kitchen that smelled somehow of bread and lemon, as if someone had thought very carefully about what a tired mother and a small girl might need. Nora walked through it in a daze. Poppy fell asleep on a velvet couch within 10 minutes, still holding the paper airplane. Damien led Nora to a small study. He poured her a glass of water. He sat across from her. And he told her everything. He told her about the bullet at 19, about the sterility, about the 3 specialists, about the clinic on the north side of the city, and the 12 hours he could not remember, and the man named Victor Croft, and the DNA test he had ordered after the transfusion, and the results that had shattered every quiet assumption he had made about his own life. He told her that Poppy was his daughter. He told her that she, Nora, had been used. That she had almost certainly been told a comforting lie about an anonymous donor, when the truth was that a monster had taken something from him without his knowledge and put it inside her, not out of kindness, but out of strategy. Nora listened. She did not interrupt. Her face went through 6 different colors and settled at last on a pale, furious calm. So I was a container, she said quietly. No. To him I was. To him, Damien said, you were an opportunity he did not deserve. And Poppy is not a weapon. She is a child. She is your child, and she is, apparently, also mine, which is a thing I am still learning how to be. But nothing about what happened to you was your fault, and nothing about who Poppy is was designed by him. She is who she is because you raised her, not because of him, not even because of me, because of you. Nora looked at him. Her eyes were bright and hard. Are you going to take her from me? No. Are you going to try? No. Nora, look at me. I am not that man. Whatever else I am not that man. I would sooner burn down every building I own than take that child from her mother. I want, if you will let me, to be part of her life, to be part of yours, in whatever shape you decide, but she is yours. Nothing about a piece of paper changes that. Nora was crying, silently, without moving. "Why me?" she whispered. "Why did he pick me?" "Because you were kind," Damien said. "And he mistook kindness for weakness. He has always made that mistake. It is why he is going to lose." He stood. He crossed to her chair. He knelt in front of her, which was a thing he had not done in front of another human being in his entire adult life. "I am going to end him," he said quietly. "Tonight. Tomorrow. This week, it will be quiet and it will be complete and he will never touch you or Poppy again. And when it is done, I am going to spend the rest of my life, if you will, let me, trying to earn what he stole from both of us." Nora reached out. She touched his face. It was the softest touch he had felt in 20 years. "Damien Kane," she whispered. "You are a strange, strange man. I know. Get up off the floor." He almost laughed. He got up off the floor. And somewhere in the penthouse, a small girl slept, holding a paper airplane, entirely unaware that a king had just knelt for her mother. Victor Croft was found 3 days later. He was found in his own study, in his own house, in a country where he believed he could not be reached, and he was found by 6 of Damien Kane's men, and he was, notably, found alive. Damien had been very specific about that. There was no drama. There was no violence. There was only a quiet flight home, and a private plane, and handcuffs, and the delivery of a very thick file to a federal prosecutor who had been waiting for Victor Croft's name to reappear for 6 years. The clinic records, which had been thought destroyed, had been found. The financial trails, which had been thought buried, had been uncovered. Every crime Victor Croft had committed against every woman who had walked through the doors of his clinic, and there had been many, was now a matter of public record. He would not be seeing the outside of a cage again. Damien visited him once in the holding facility, before the trial. He did not speak for a long time. He simply stood on the other side of the glass and looked at the man who had shot his father, who had crippled him at 19, who had stolen from him at 27, and who had, in the end, been utterly outmaneuvered by the daughter he had tried to weaponize. "Ch! You should have killed me 20 years ago," Croft rasped. "I know," Damien said, "but I would not have had her. So I am glad I did not." He turned. He walked away. He did not look back. 6 months later, on a warm afternoon in early autumn, Nora Bellwether stood in front of a mirror in a small back room of a large white building, wearing a dress the color of cream, with her chestnut hair loose down her back, and she looked at herself and did not entirely recognize the woman she saw. She was still soft. She was still full. She was still, unmistakably, herself. But she was standing straighter. Her eyes were brighter. And there was something in her face that had not been there a year ago, some quiet, confident thing, some understanding, at last, that she had always been worth exactly what she was. Behind her, her best friend, Delia, who had been her ferocious cheerleader for a decade, adjusted the small crown of tiny white flowers in her hair and grinned. "You look like a queen." "I feel like a person," Nora said. "I forgot what that felt like." "Damien did that." "No," Nora said. And she smiled at herself in the mirror. "I did that. He just noticed." Delia laughed. She kissed Nora's cheek. "Go get married, you magnificent creature." The building was a new one. Damien had built it in 6 months, which was even for him absurd. It was on the site of the old clinic, which had been demolished quietly and without ceremony, and in its place he had built a foundation. It was called the Poppy House. It provided free medical care and legal advocacy and safe housing and long-term support to women who had been exploited by unregulated clinics, and it was, on that afternoon, holding its grand opening. It was also, coincidentally, holding a wedding. Nora walked down the aisle of the new atrium, past 300 people, past donors and journalists and doctors, and every woman who had ever been helped by the Foundation in its first 6 months of quiet operation. And she walked toward the man who was waiting for her. Damien Kane stood at the end of the aisle in a plain dark suit, with Poppy holding his hand and beaming in a small yellow dress. And he looked at Nora, coming toward him, and for the second time in his life, he could not remember how to speak. He remembered eventually. He said his vows. He put a ring on her finger. And he kissed her, once, gently, in front of 300 people. And then he turned to the crowd, and he lifted Poppy into his arms, and he said, in a voice that carried clearly through the atrium, "I would like to introduce you to my wife, Nora Kane, and to our daughter, Poppy. This building, and everything inside it, and every dollar behind it exists because of them. Because a woman I did not deserve was kind to a man she did not know, and because a child neither of us expected saved us both. This is the Poppy House. It will stand as long as I do. And it will be here for every woman who has ever been told by anyone that she was small." He set Poppy down. He took Nora's hand. And the applause was long and loud, and Nora, who had spent 32 years being invisible, stood in the light and let herself be seen. That night, in the penthouse that had become their home, after Poppy was asleep with the paper airplane still tucked under her pillow, Nora and Damien stood on the balcony and looked out at the city. "I have been thinking," Damien said. "Dangerous," he smiled. It was still a rare thing on his face, and she treasured everyone. "I have been thinking that I owe you an apology." "For what?" "For all the weeks I did not tell you what I knew, for letting you feel confused, for all the flowers I sent anonymously when I could have brought them myself." "You sent the peonies." "I sent the peonies." "I knew you sent the peonies." He laughed quietly. "Of course you did." She leaned against him. He put his arm around her. Below them, the city hummed. "Damien, yes, I want to ask you something, anything. When did you know that you loved me?" He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "The moment you fell in the hospital lobby. Before I knew your name, before I knew about Poppy. Before I knew anything. I saw you sobbing on the floor, and I thought, I will do whatever this woman needs for the rest of my life. And I will not ask why. I did not have language for it yet. But I knew." Nora did not speak for a long time. Then she said, "I knew when you knelt on the floor of the study and told me you would burn down every building you owned before you would take her from me. Before that, I thought maybe. After that, I knew." He kissed the top of her head. "Nora." "Yes. Thank you." "For what?" "For letting me be the sad man who came back." She laughed. It was a warm, full laugh, the kind she had not laughed in years. And it filled the balcony, and drifted out over the city like something being set free at last. And in the small bedroom down the hall, a 6-year-old girl slept peacefully, holding a paper airplane, dreaming of bees, entirely unafraid of the dark for the first time in her life. Because upstairs, on the balcony, her mother was laughing, and a man who had once been very sad was learning, at last, how to be happy. And the empire that had been built on ice was, quietly, without ceremony, becoming something else. Something warmer. Something worth protecting. Something that would stand in the end. Not for power, but for love.